Hello.
Well, hi there.
Here we go again.
Here we go. And as if anyone in St. Louis needed a reminder that today is the first day of summer, it was about 95 degrees when the band took the stage. So the lyric, too hot to even speak now, was especially apt
Yes.
to kick off
I've been
tonight's
in some
show.
of those Midwestern summers. Geez,
Yeah.
they can get moist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what's the name of the town they're in? It's not exactly St. Louis, but it's St. Louis adjacent.
Yeah. Uh,
Anyway,
don't have it right in front of me, but we didn't leave the city. We didn't leave St. Louis, the city of blues, because we weren't there. We're still here on Dead Air, originating from New York and Oakland, California, as well as St. Louis. I'm Gary Lambert.
that's correct.
The other feller is David Gans, and we are doing this halftime show every single set break of the Dead and Company tour, and we are delighted to be doing so on behalf of Nugs.net.
That's true. They've got several different subscription services. You can be watching this show in 4K at home. You can subscribe to the whole tour and watch it in 4K. There's a lot of audio download options. There's a streaming service. Our mission here is to thank you for watching as far as you have. And if you're just watching the preview, convert you into a subscriber or a paid customer on one level or another. And there are many, many levels at nugs.net. And there's also nugs.net/deadco, which might lead you to some special plans that include, for example, access to all the Dead and Company shows from 2016 to the present.
That's right. And there's also a Sirius XM Nugs collaboration where if you subscribe to Sirius XM at what I think they call the Platinum VIP level, how about that for superlatives? You can also get a selection from the vast Nugs.net library. When I say vast, I ain't kidding. It is thousands and thousands of pieces of music, a lot of Dead related and jam band content, but also artists like Bruce Springsteen and Wilco and Pearl Jam and all sorts of genres represented. A lot of independent artists who don't really have the conventional means of distribution and airplay and all that stuff because of the way the music industry is. Nugs.net is
Very
not that
true.
music industry. They bring you this independent music that you might not find in other places. And it's a wonderful place to get turned on to new stuff as well.
And nugs.net is, as far as I know, the only live music based streaming service. And they do lots and lots of live stuff like we're doing here tonight. If you're watching this on YouTube and it's the free preview, you can go to nugs.net and buy the show, and then you can go back and watch the whole first set. And by the way, you have 48 hours to watch the whole thing again as many times as you want. That's one of the many options for participating in nugs.net and the Dead and Company live streaming and audio download world. Let me quickly run down the set list and then we'll bring
Yes.
our special guest in. We began with The Music Never Stopped, as Gary noted. Too Hot to Even Speak Now is a little bit on the nose, I would think. Alabama Getaway, Mississippi Half Step, Jack Straw, Easy Wind, Black Throated Wind, and Bird Song. It was a pretty high energy first set to my ear.
Black Throated Wind with local reference, of course.
The City of Blues.
Those guys never
That's
miss
true.
a trick. So, yeah, David mentioned a special guest, and we are so excited to have him. So, I'd like to introduce him right now. He is a filmmaker responsible for some wonderful films and TV work, but maybe best known for two certified cult classic rock movies. Get Crazy, which was a long lost film, recently unlost and released on Blu ray and DVD, and one of my all-time favorites, the Ramones classic, Rock and Roll High School. And he's also got some deep Grateful Dead history, some Fillmore East history, some Euro 72 history, plenty to talk about in our ballpark, as well as his illustrious film career. So let's bring on our friend, Alan Arkish.
Hi.
Hello. How are you? Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see
Stay in that,
you.
stay in that frame. Stay in that frame,
Come on,
sir.
man. There you go. I've thoroughly enjoyed your participation in this amazing season of the good old Grateful Dead cast. You have a certain New York accent that just rings extra true to me somehow,
It will
and I
not go
happen
away.
to know, the depth of your connection. So it was really great to hear those stories in that context. And you do have a history that goes way back with the Grateful Dead and with Jerry Garcia.
Yes, I think the first time I saw them was in June of '67
Wow.
at a club in the Village. It was their first, I guess, their first national tour. A place
Mhm.
called the Cafe A Go Go,
Yes.
and I bought the first record when it came out because I had been reading this series of articles in the Herald Tribune by Tom Wolfe about the acid test. And that was my first time of reading about the Warlocks, and then they became the Dead. And then I noticed that they were I was working at a college radio station, and Billboard or something said that one of their that they're putting out a record. And at that point, I guess I had already heard all the Airplane records, Surrealistic Pillow, and so forth. So I bought that Dead record, and we saw them then. We saw them in June. You know,
Yeah,
so
that
and
was their first paying gig in New York City. So you were
yeah,
present at the creation of the Grateful Dead's great relationship with my hometown.
exactly.
But like so many of the most interesting people we've run across in the Grateful Dead orbit, you your exposure to them just sort of fed your own creativity, and you worked the light show and stuff and production at the Fillmore East, and then went on to an illustrious career as a filmmaker in your own right.
Yeah. I would say I think it's kind of interesting in retrospect to look at their East Coast travails, and I think it was almost a year and a half before there are certain kinds of wine that they say don't travel well. And I think that was true of the Dead. I saw them in Tompkins Square Park. I saw them at the Electric Circus. I saw them a bunch of times, and never was it the magic that I had been promised, so to speak, by people
Huh.
from the other coast. But when they played at the Fillmore East, and I think it was January or February of '69, and it was them and Janis Joplin. That was, I mean, everyone at the Fillmore who's worked there was a fan of music. And they all at once said, "Oh, that's what everyone's talking about." And from then
Uh,
on, it was a career that never stopped, you know.
and what were
Yeah,
you
you were.
doing at the Fillmore at that time, Fillmore East? Sorry, Gary.
What,
What were you
excuse
doing
me?
there?
Okay, so I went to the first show, first weekend as a customer, and I saw a bunch of shows. I did not see the first Dead show there, where they were with the Jeff Beck group. But towards the end of the summer of '68, I got a job as an usher. And then I became the head of an ushering crew. And then I was an usher until early spring of '69. And that's when I was on the stage crew. And I stayed on the stage crew until I graduated from film school in June of '70. And then I joined Joe's Lights and went to London in '71 and worked there. And that I worked at the theater that closed down and almost screwed up the whole Europe '72 tour, the Rainbow Theater.
Rainbow,
And that's
right?
why if you really want to get deep into Grateful Dead knowledge, that was how it went. And so being on the stage crew and seeing as many shows and being the person who brought sodas and beers to the bands and bought, and stuff, they were like, well, let me put it this way. When they played, Mickey would bring his grandparents and we'd set up a folding chair and they would sit on the stage. That's how close everyone got. And so it
Wow.
was a very familiar situation. And Garcia would come in the afternoons, when we were sweeping the stage and setting up, and bring an acoustic guitar and just play with everyone. And that's actually how I made my first connection to him, was under those circumstances. Um, I was on I used to pick up the beer and wine and do all that along with the stage crew job. on Fridays, and then on Saturdays I would come in at about 4 and restock the dressing rooms. And so I started at the top usually and worked my way down. And the Dead were playing there. This has got to be June of '69, and they were headlining, and they had been so great the night before. It was one of those late Friday night shows, and carrying these, 2 or 3 cases of soda and beer. And you know how when you do that, you back into a room and slam the door open with your butt. And I'm
Right.
back and slam the door over, and I'm facing Garcia. Okay. Now this is 26-year-old Garcia, 27-year-old Garcia. And it's the guy with his eyes on fire. And the room is full of his usual, he smoked Pall Malls or something. And he's got a little guitar, his amp there, and he's playing, and the sun is coming in the window. And I apologized profusely and so forth. It was rare that you saw anyone in the dressing room at 5 in the afternoon. And he said, "No, man, do what you got to do." And of course, you're uncomfortable, and putting away the soda and the beer, and made some conversation about how much I liked the show last night. And he said, "No, we're on a great roll. I think tonight is going to be great." And I said, "Oh, great." And I said, "I really liked Oxamoxa." And I said, "When are you going to do a live record?" And he said, "Oh, we've got one. And we've been touring with it, and it's coming out. That would be Live Dead." And so when they played in early '69 with Janis, the set was essentially Live Dead. If you go back, I have a recording of it. So anyway, I'm putting away the beer and the soda, and I'm just yammering I was a 20-year-old, 19-year-old film student, and said how much I liked Oxamoxa. And I said, "My favorite song on it is Mountains of the Moon. Do you ever play it?" And he said, "It's not one we play very often live, etc." And I said, "Oh, okay." And then as I'm finishing up, he starts playing Mountains of the Moon for me. And I turned around, I sat on the floor, and the sunlight, late afternoon in New York, through the film had those old glass that had metal in it, and the sun is pouring in on him, and he sings Mountains of the Moon. And
wow.
when it finished, I said, "Thank you, Jerry." And he says, "Later, man." And that started a 25-year-old friendship. It became a thing where I would see each other, and we became friends, and we talked a lot about music and film and science fiction. And that was the tenor of our conversations. I could go to him and say, "I want to learn about this," and he would explain to me the improvisational music that had inspired him. He and I ended up having a conversation about Charles Ives, American composer, and what an influence he had been on this one. I had to bring these guys. These are originals.
Yes.
Ah.
There it is.
Totally.
Up there. Up there. Okay.
Huh.
I can't get. There we go. That's
Yes.
it. Right there. That's an original one. It's got the original Warner's label, the
Mhm.
green one.
Mhm.
And this sucker is worn out.
Yeah. Oh,
I
sure.
played this endlessly. And
That's great.
here's my first one. This one. So, and it's interesting. At the time, I really gave it a lot of chances. And I finally got to where I liked Viola Lee and a couple other things. And it was a step-by-step thing. But being there and having the opportunity to see the evolution, that's what was the real gift, because all of us were fans, certainly of them and all the other bands. And during that period, they went from kind of a hard edge psychedelic band in a certain way. And you'd start to see those acoustic sets, and you'd start to hear Uncle John's band and so forth. And they watching them evolve and stretch. And then when Working Man's Dead came out, it's like we all felt like, yes, our boys are changing.
Yeah, that period you described, the February shows they opened for Janis were, pretty
Yeah,
much the psychedelic essence of the Grateful Dead. A lot of that Live Dead material and Alex Moxo material. By June, Garcia had a pedal steel on stage, and there they are singing George Jones songs and Merle Haggard songs, and that to me seemed like such a amazing turn of events. I just said, these guys can and will do anything, and it was a real revelation, and that was planting the seeds for what became Working Bands.
yeah, and hearing those songs evolve over time, and then buying the record, you felt like you were part of something, And look, music moved the culture in those days, and they were a central part of it. Um, I guess I don't think anybody really thought that this would be the band that 50 years from now would be carrying American music on their back,
Right.
and be an integral part of the culture. That just didn't seem possible with the Hells Angels carrying nitrous oxide tanks around. But nonetheless, you know, but nonetheless, that's where it evolved to. And we really feel lucky to have witnessed so many great shows and to have spent a lot of time, like in the 70s, when they were recording Terrapin Station. They did it in the San Fernando Valley, and they did the mix on their movie. Jerry spent a lot of time in LA. So we used to watch movies together. I had a 16 millimeter projector and access to a big film collection. So we would watch movies late at night and stuff. He'd come by with
What kind of
Parrish and
stuff?
somebody else. I actually brought one. Okay. I turned
Huh.
Jerry on to this movie. Okay. Let me see if I got it. It's
Oh my
called,
God!
Hell's
Yes.
a poppin'.
Oh, so
now,
weird.
this is so Garcia, right? Because talk about breaking the fourth wall. This one breaks the fifth and the sixth, And this movie was the inspiration for Get Crazy in a big way. So we watched Hell's a Poppin' together on a double bill with Fellini's 8.5. Okay, gentlemen, it can be done.
The
And
full range, man. It's like a Grateful Dead concert right there, man. That's
exactly,
like Death
we
Don't
love,
Have No Mercy, followed by Sugar Magnolia.
yeah, exactly. And we love the Eagles have wings, and so he was like a real film buff, and he liked a lot of trashy sci-fi. And so I had access to a lot of it because it was being collected by a really good friend of mine named Joe Dante, who did Gremlins and a
Oh
lot of other
yes.
movies. Yeah, so he got to see
Matinee, great movie. Yeah,
exactly. But Jerry
yeah,
got to see Rocket Ship XM and all these other,
yeah. Oh,
but,
great.
and so it was nice to stay in touch with him, and he was always aware of what I was doing and made an effort to see it, And when they were in town, I'd pack up a 16 millimeter projector, or if they were in San Francisco, and bring my latest film up there and run it for them in the hotel room in 16.
Wow,
So that's where he saw Rock and Roll High School, was that.
that's fantastic. And you also wound up working the Europe '72 tour as an outgrowth of your having worked on the light show at Phil
Yeah.
Maurice. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Now the Rainbow did not succeed,
Right.
but the Dead came anyway. And we were the first stop for this gigantic entourage. And I remember the load in at
Wait,
Wembley
you were
Pool.
working at the Rainbow, not on the
Yes, I
Dead
was.
tour.
Right.
Okay.
Not on the Dead tour. I was part of Joe's Lights on the Rainbow. That
Okay.
was our home stop. And like the opening weekend of the Rainbow was the Who, in support of their new record, Who's Next. So we were hearing Bob O'Reilly and Won't Get Fooled Again for the first time. And so that was what we were doing. And the Rainbow kind of closed after 4 months, and then the Dead were there. And I don't know all the details, but they needed a place to play, and they ended up in Wembley Pool. And there was concern just when you walked in how much it echoed, And there was a sound check 2 days before, and also to make sure everything was there and so forth. It was a big amount of equipment to be brought from San Francisco, and it sounded dreadful, absolutely dreadful. Now, the sound crew from the Rainbow were the guys who designed the Fillmore East sound system and Woodstock, and they were geniuses. And
Right.
them and the Dead Sound crew were buddies, you know. And so they all got together and decided the only thing they could do, because it was a big room with a lot of air above and reflective walls of tile, was to cut down on the reverberation. And they were so smart. Rather than try and cover the tile, they went and basically rented every single theatrical curtain that they could find and hung them at 5 and 6 feet perpendicular to the stage. So it was a series of baffles. And then when they ran out of those, they rented parachutes. So it went from dark purplish and red, which is most curtains, to white parachutes. And if you were sitting in the back, it was like being in a tent with the Grateful Dead. And it did the trick. It not only sounded really good. I mean, it sounds okay on the record, you know, on the year 72 stuff, especially the second night. But the views in both directions were so unique, you know, and that was the beginning of the tour. And then we caught up with them in Amsterdam. We were playing a festival in Amsterdam with the New Riders, Ike and Tina Turner, Buddy Miles Express, and Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd on the verge of the big one with the
Dark
crystal
Side.
on the. Yes,
Dark.
that was there.
Yes.
They were just, and the guy who was designing the Pink Floyd tour lighting and stage production was the old lighting designer from the Fillmore East, the guy by the name at the time of Arthur Shafransky. So Arthur had designed all this. After a couple of Floyd tours, Arthur went back to art school and changed his name to Arthur Max, and has done every single Ridley Scott movie. So if you see Gladiator or you see Seven, which is his first movie, or any of them, that's Arthur.
Great.
And
Alan, if I can jump in, we don't have that much time left. This time flew by because you have so many great stories to tell. Your filmmaking career, of course, two of the hallmarks. We talked about Rock and Roll High School and Get Crazy, which is based on your experiences at Fillmore East, and I'm so happy people can see that after so many years.
Yeah.
Rock and Roll High School, took you into a world that in some ways couldn't be more different than the Grateful Dead, working with the Ramones, who, while the Grateful Dead would play one song for 40 minutes, the Ramones would play 22-minute songs in about the same space. But you got to be friends with the Ramones, and you said you had a little story about the Ramones' opinion of the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, the Ramones came over to my apartment, the same apartment that Jerry had been in. And the idea was we were going to watch a Hard Day's Night.
The band is going back on.
Stop.
I hate to say this.
Oh, okay.
Alan,
No
come back
problem.
and come back and talk to us on the radio, please.
just a box of rain, wind and water. Believe it if you need it. If you don't, just pass it on. Sun and shower, wind and rain, in and out the window like a moth before a flame. Oh, it is just a box of rain. I don't know who put it there. Believe it if you need it, or leave it if you dare. It is just a box of rain over a ribbon for your hair. Such a long, long time to be gone, and a short time to be there.